Can money really make people act this strange? I started working as a cooperative extension agent right out of grad school, just before the pandemic began. For those who don't know, a cooperative extension agent is part of the public outreach system of land-grant universities. Our job is to connect homeowners and farmers with university research and teach best practices that help them reach their goals with the least amount of harm. Extension work used to be only about agriculture, but now it can include many topics like gardening, family sciences, finances, community development, and even mental health. I was technically an agriculture agent, but I focused on horticulture, which meant I dealt with trees, vegetables, lawns, gardens, and insects. Unlike many counties, our district made house calls as part of our daily work. This was a blessing during the early pandemic because it allowed me to get out of the office while still helping people. Most of my visits involved sick plants outside, so I wasn't worried about spreading illness. About 3/4 of the questions I answered during my 4.5 years on the job were about trees. Tree-related questions often came with warnings I needed to share. If a tree was dangerous and fell on someone or something, I wasn't legally responsible due to state laws protecting educators acting in good faith. However, my conscience would never allow me to ignore a serious risk. Because of this, I always gave careful, cautious assessments and told homeowners exactly what they needed to do. Most trees were safe if monitored. If a tree was an immediate hazard, I recommended removing it right away. One of my regular callers was EP. I met her soon after starting the job, and she often reached out with the smallest gardening questions. I honestly enjoyed every call. She lived in a small town and loved gardening more than almost anyone I knew. Whenever I visited, she proudly showed me her latest gardening projects. She even joined our Master Gardener volunteer program and helped at many events. She became one of my favorite repeat visitors. Near the end of my 3rd year, her town was hit by strong straight-line winds that knocked down about 2/3 of the city's trees, including all but one of hers, an old, twisted silver maple at the end of her driveway. She loved her garden so much that I'm convinced she grieved the loss of those trees. She asked me to inspect the remaining maple, and at that time it showed no signs of being dangerous. I told her it should be fine. 2 weeks later, she called again, sounding upset. A city worker cleaning up debris had backed a truck into the tree and taken a large chunk out of the trunk. When I arrived, I saw a deep gash in the bark and underlying wood. It looked bad, but the main structure wasn't damaged. I told her the tree could survive as long as she kept an eye on it and watched for decay. Because she had gardening experience, I didn't go into my usual detailed explanation, something I later regretted. 2 weeks after that, she called again for another reason, but the tree came up once more. I repeated that she needed to monitor it so decay didn't spread inside the trunk. For the rest of its life? She asked. Yes? You didn't say that before. I explained again that once the trunk wood is exposed, decay will eventually find its way in. But the tree still had plenty of life left and wasn't a danger to her home. Her tone changed instantly. So I have to keep checking this tree when I could have gotten reimbursed by the city for damaging it? I apologized if I hadn't made that clear, but yes, that was basically the case. Then she said, well, next time I guess I'll call an expert, and hung up. I was stunned. First, our visits were free. Hiring a private tree expert in her small town would have been expensive and probably cost more than any reimbursement she might have gotten. Second, between my degree and years of horticulture experience, I was very qualified, and she knew it. Lastly, all our past interactions had been kind and pleasant, so her sudden hostility felt completely out of character. I sulked for the rest of the day, but eventually let it go. I blamed it on the emotional stress of losing so many trees. And strangely, after that call, she went right back to being her usual polite self. We interacted at least 10 more times before I left the job, and she never mentioned that phone call again. As far as I know, the tree is still standing and doing well. It ended up being the sourest moment of my career, but if that was the worst thing that happened in 4.5 years, I consider myself lucky. I did learn one important lesson though. When money gets involved, people can act in ways you never expect, even people you think you know well.